Welcome back to episode 250 of the Tall Boy Radio podcast. And who knows where it goes when the beer flows? Well, I can tell you where it isn't flowing. It isn't flowing in the direction of our guest tonight, who had some confusion over the chronology of when we record and was online this morning at 8:20 while we were all ensconced in our work, being as studious as we always are, and the model employees that you can see before you. But without further ado, we're going to bring you an episode based maybe on local politics or politics a little bit local to you if you're listening in the States. But before we do, let's say hello to GFG.
How are we? Evening all, evening in the world. I'm just amazed at some of those words you've just used in the intro there. I don't know what dictionary you've just swallowed or whatever, perused. That's a good word. I'll take that. But no, look, it's a shame that the guest isn't with us for this evening, but looking forward to just the three of us sort of chewing the cord and seeing where we go.
Indeed, indeed. And if you hear a little bit of rumbling in the background, that isn't because Dave hasn't had his dinner yet. It is firework night here in the UK, bonfire night, Guy Fawkes night, call it what you will. But yeah, we've arranged for our guest to rejoin us, or join us, I should say, in January. So we will be bringing you the episode about adults with ADHD. Apologies if you're tuning in and wanting to hear about that, and then listen to us ramble on about some American politics. But before we do, David, how's your belly?
It's fine. My belly has gone quiet. I'll use the mute button judiciously during the episode. If I hear the fireworks, I'll mute, unless I'm talking. Well, I might still mute. Looking forward to that. I've just asked ChatGPT who's going to win. It's refusing to be drawn on an answer. It says it can't predict it. It says it doesn't have the information. I asked it who it wanted to win, and apparently it doesn't have personal opinions or desires. So I'm none the wiser.
There you go. Interesting. Well, I can tell you from a betting perspective who's favourite, and Trump is odds on to win by. It's not. You know, he's not standing out ahead in the bookies' favourites that far. Harris is relatively close second, but you know, this is going to be based on the polls. And one thing we do know about the polls is wildly inaccurate, is what we've seen, certainly in the UK and in the US. And obviously, this time, you know, it's really where all the voter fraud goes in it, don't you think, has it?
Look, it's one of those. I mean, looking at it from afar, and we sort of, I don't know if we mentioned it when we were at the start of the show in the green room, but you know, like both sides are claiming like various underhand skullduggery is happening, and I know that there was some consternation of sort of people from the UK going over and voting and supporting various sides, and I think RPM's come out and said, no, I'm forging strong links and relationships with Mr. Trump because some backbenchers went over and supported sort of Harris and this, that, and the other. So you know, look, it obviously captures the world's imagination as such, just because it is such a big thing, and they are one of the world's superpowers, and it's sort of frightening when you think of actually how much sort of power certain people have, and there's that, obviously, that was it famous phrase, is it sort of that power and corrupts, or absolutely corrupts, or whatever the phrase is. But when you look at like one person and how much. Did you like that, Dave? I can't remember the quote.
Yeah.
Dave's chuckling away there.
Power corrupts
absolutely.
Absolute power corrupts absolutely.
All right, yeah. So I was close. You know, I knew what I wanted to say. But yeah. You know, look, I say it captures the world's imagination, and is it this time tomorrow? We'll know this time.
They said this last time, and it carried on for a couple of days while
Yeah.
the votes were being counted
and recast, and
and refound.
certain dead people were voting.
Yeah, what do you think of all these accusations, Dave?
Of the voter fraud, that look, I think there's always going to be incidents of people trying to rig it. I think when you've got a country of 360 million, is it something like that? You know, even if you have a few thousand, yes, it's there, but it's statistically insignificant, and there was never any evidence found of any widespread or organized corruption or fraud last time. And no doubt it'll be the same this time. There might be some people actually try it, and I've no doubt that supporters of one or the other candidate will probably be trying to make it look like the other is committing voter fraud in some way. it's all ridiculous, really, isn't it? The vote is the vote. If we can't have a vote and trust its result in America in 2020 or 2024, then what hope is there?
Good point.
It is a good point, but you play devil's advocate and you say statistically it is insignificant. At what point does it become statistically significant as opposed to insignificant? So if you talked about 100,000 votes or 200,000 votes, or at what point does it become statistically relevant? And I don't know the answer to that. And if you do get to that tipping point where it does become statistically relevant, what is it you can do to stop that? And can you ever have a completely unbiased, unrigged poll? And I don't know. And I don't know the answer to that, if I'm honest.
I don't think there is an answer to that, to be honest. I think, yeah, it's a situation. I don't know. Is it a new thing? Has it always gone on? I know we've sort of seen in the UK a little bits of gerrymandering and moving the borders so that it favours the political parties when they're in power. They'll move the borders so they get more votes in this constituency and they lose some from there to add to the next. Yeah, it's the one thing we do know about politics is I don't trust a single one of the buggers. That's a fact in the UK or the US. I've got reservations, but this election, it's going to be making history one way or the other, isn't it? Because you're either going to have Kamala Harris in power, who will be the first female president the United States has ever seen, or you'll have Donald Trump, who was a convicted felon. I think it was quashed and overturned, as is my understanding, and will be only the second president in history to serve 2 non-consecutive terms. I think the last one was Grover Cleveland. Am I right in saying?
I'll take you with that's good knowledge if that's the case. And I actually didn't know that. And yeah, you can you understand and you're aware of presidents and sort of running consecutive periods of time, but to lose one and then regain it, I didn't realize that he would only be the second one for that. So that's in a way, when you look at that, is it impressive? I don't know. Is impressive the right word? But it's certainly something that if he is only the second person in history, then he's done all right.
Yeah, and if it is Cleveland, if it's not, let me know. But I'm pretty sure it's Grover Cleveland. But yeah, he won the popular vote 3 elections in a row. Arguably, maybe like Donald Trump, but he lost the middle one on the college vote. Well, I don't really know all those college votes work, whatever the electoral colleges. So yeah, I believe he lost the vote on that. There we go. Let's see. We have a comment here. The USA vote system is so different. It's not who gets the most votes; it's whoever gets the most electoral votes. So there you go. I could be right what I'm saying. It could be somebody, Steve, I believe it is, even though he goes under the moniker of Paul, letting us know that is the case. But yeah,
we've done an episode before. I can't remember which one it was, and we sort of had a look at the differences between the UK and the US voting system, and obviously Steve's right. It isn't who gets them, and they almost do like the you need 217, and then certain votes and certain states are worth more than others, irrespective of the number of people that vote and stuff, and it's all based on seats and vote, and it is a bit weird that way. And you would have thought, and I don't know, and it's obviously very naive to think this maybe, but you sort of think one person, one vote, and whoever gets the most votes wins, sort of thing. That would be, to me, the most obvious way to do it. But obviously, various countries around the world do various different things. So
too easy. Too easy,
too easy, I suppose. Yeah.
So it was Grover Cleveland. Do you know the years?
I think it was the late 1800s.
1885 to 1889, and then he skipped one, and then he came back. Yeah,
that's not bad, is it?
That's pretty good. I mean, if you knew that completely unprepared, I'm impressed.
I did. Yeah, I'm not. Well, I have prepared for this episode, but I could talk to you a little bit about ADHD if you want.
No, I mean,
someone said I could have done anyway.
I heard. I think one of the most depressing things I heard on the radio about the election this morning, or certainly me, I thought it was depressing that people were thinking this way, and it would be easy to say this is systematic of Trump supporters, and it's probably not that straightforward. But this American voter was on Radio 4, and they were asking who they're going to vote for. And first he said, well, it's not going to be that Kamala, whatever her name is. It's not going to be her. And the interviewer said, well, why not? What has she not done? And she says, well, I just don't think America is ready for a woman president.
Wow.
And I thought, oh my God.
He's probably true. He's probably true. And that's no reflection on females.
No, it's a reflection on Americans.
Yeah, it's no. I mean that is a concerning comment, but I mean, when you think about how the media portrays Trump, how the media portrays Harris, certainly in the UK, I know it's slightly different to how they're portrayed in the US. Not vastly different. Is that the media giving us a view that we then buy into of what Trump voters are like? That it basically someone, if you're going to vote for Trump, you're some dude from Buttfuck, Oklahoma or somewhere like that, and that's how you're sold. Whereas if you vote for Harris, I've heard various stories of her, but oh no, I'm not going to repeat those. Actually, they do sound like they could get me into a bit of liable trouble. But do you think that the way the media portrays these people is accurate, or do you think there's a little bit of storytelling?
Oh, I've got no doubt the storytelling. I wonder whether or not. I mean, look again. Idealistically, you'd like to think that it comes down about their politics and their views on certain really important issues. A lot of it will come down to just, do you like the person? And I think, unfortunately, there's a lot of people around, probably me included, who were quite naive just in terms of what do they stand for in terms of Harris and Trump, in terms of where are they and where do they lie on immigration or taxes or whatever. And I don't know enough about the sort of the American big issues. I mean, obviously, you talk in the UK, you've immigration and various other things, but in America, is it the same? So I'm not sure. So I'm sort of going on, I suppose, the media perception of those two people, and I'm forming an opinion. Obviously, I'd like to think I'm relatively well educated, so can see through some of the bullshit that a lot of people perhaps can't. But I do think the media has a lot to answer for in terms of the perception of those people, and they portray the person as opposed to the their beliefs in terms of the, like I said, the political issues.
Yeah, I mean, you're not a million miles away, to be honest, dude, asking those questions. But in all honesty, I don't think the stories, although slightly different from a different perspective, is that they are, that immigration is a thing over there, like border control is a concern from certainly from the south.
Well, he built the wall, or did he? That was one of the things that he was sort of famed for initially. I'm going to build a wall, and I started building it, and he might continue building it if he gets in this time. You never know, do you?
Given the option, he may continue. But then, there's the concerns about food prices. There's the concerns about fuel prices. It's not a million miles away from the same concerns in the UK. However, I will say this, that I think that America is very much the world as far as America is concerned. And I mean that to all our American friends in the nicest possible way, that they're very much focused on their own issues. In the UK, I think we recognize that the food issue, fuel issue is more of a global concern. It's very centralized there, that this guy is entirely to blame for it. So anyway, so let's just read out this next. So the scary thing is that a lot of young people will vote just on the basis that celebrities endorse a candidate and not on any manifesto that they have. That's an interesting phrase. Thank you very much, Steve. Would you vote how Taylor Swift votes, Gaz?
Well, no, I wouldn't, but I can absolutely understand how some of the young impressionable voters of America and to a certain extent the UK, if it happened in this country, although I do think it happens potentially more in America, that they seem to involve celebrities and overhype quite a lot compared to what we do. But I absolutely can see why, young voters would get, not brainwashed, that's a terrible phrase, I suppose, but, maybe persuaded to vote in a certain way just based upon certain celebrities that they like or they follow. And think, well, if Taylor Swift is voting, then I'll vote that way. You know what I mean? And I absolutely can understand that.
Yeah. Dave, did you ever vote the same way Freddie Mercury did?
I couldn't tell you who he voted for. Unlikely, but I have no idea. To answer your question, when I look at it, there's my understanding of the policies and the manifesto. Broadly speaking, my knowledge doesn't go that deep, so I'm not that interested, and I don't spend time looking into it. But Trump appears to be, pretty much protectionist, and he's an America first, which means, that comes down to immigration, it comes down to economy, it comes to helping the world out. It's like, sod you, we'll do what's for us and what's the best for us. And because the Americans generally feel that if it's the best for them, it's the best for the world. So they're doing the world a favor by being who they are, being the best at everything. And they don't seem to see the consequences sometimes of those actions. That's about it. Whereas Kamala Harris and the Democrats are more likely to have a more sort of open viewpoint on things like immigration and the world economy and all those sort of things. So I think that's the broad difference as far as I can understand. In terms of the actual individuals, I can only base it on what I see of them when they are talking, when you're watching the news clips of them speaking, and I hear Trump, who is just a misogynistic, racist, divisive, horrible person, and Kamala Harris appears to be a sensible person who wants to do the right things. Now, that doesn't mean that translates into their policies directly in any way, but I'm pretty sure it probably plays a big part in it.
Well, Cyril says, we're going back on our previous comment. Cyril, I believe, joined us for the Lego episode that he did a little while ago. If you remember him, yeah. He estimates 80% accurate and 20% storytelling. So there you go. So he does believe there's some truth in that. So just on Trump there, then, Dave, he made some pretty bold statements about the fella. Is he racist?
Wow, I think he's probably racist in the same way that Nigel Farage is. In that they may not necessarily be out and out racist, as in they've got their white outfits and pointy hoods, but they certainly stoke it and they fuel racism, and they encourage it by very carefully choosing their words in a way that, I mean, in this country it'd get you in trouble. In that country it perhaps wouldn't anyway. But I think, it's very, without knowing the person as an individual, it's very hard to know whether they're underlyingly actually racist. But everything he says would suggest that he's quite happy to create diverse racism in his country.
Interesting. I mean, I couldn't go as far as to say he was racist, but my biggest issue with Trump, we can talk about Harris and her faults afterwards, is the divisive nature. That he will divide people. When I'm looking at the States now and you hear people talking, whether accurately or not, about the potential of a civil war, a second civil war, but what America needs is somebody's going to bring people together. I'm not sure Harris is that person either, but
yeah, and look, and literally as you said it, I was thinking, he is that divisive that you could see him being absolutely happy as Larry, having won, and absolutely not giving a fucking rat's ass about and I'll make the figures up, the 48.9% of people or whatever it is, that didn't vote for him. And he's like, well, I don't really care, if I'm honest. So I do wonder whether or not there might come a point where, is it civil war as we would understand it? But, and it probably won't be a civil war in terms of, let's get your guns out and sort of shoot each other. But I do think it would be a civil war in terms of let's wage war in terms of the politics and the outcome and the divisive nature of him. I can't see a civil war actually manifesting itself in terms of a physical war, if that makes sense. But I do wonder whether or not you might get your big companies and your big industries, which happens in America, literally going at each other back and forward. I get that, but I genuinely don't think he cares. If he's in office and he's basically got the power, I just don't think he cares. But I do agree with you in as much as you would want somebody to be inclusive, if that's the right phrase, whatever the opposite phrase of divisive is. You'd want them to be inclusive as opposed to divisive, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah, well, Cyril chimes in and says, if not racist, Trump is definitely classist and stokes racism to his advantage. What some Americans worry about is the fact that members of the KKK and the neo-Nazis tend to fly his flag. I guess, yeah, whereas he may or may not be, when you've got a level of support, I guess, there's that could be where that perception is created. And like we say, he certainly divides and uses whatever means necessary.
So here's a question for you then.
Go on.
So if and I'm not suggesting for 1 minute that he is, if he is a racist, would he accept the support of people from the race or a certain race of people that he is perceived to be racist against, if that meant that that would garnish enough support for him to then get in office?
It's a good question, that, to be fair, you know what I mean? And I guess we saw it a little bit with the Labour Party when Corbyn was in charge, and there was the race row there around, some sort of anti-Semitism that went on. Nothing to suggest that Corbyn himself was an anti-Semite. However, did he embrace the support of people who may have been to get what he,
That's what I mean.
get
Yeah,
what
yeah.
he wanted to? Yeah, I guess so. But I don't think that necessarily made him a racist himself. And in terms of Trump, maybe that's the case. If I'm going to be honest, I'm not seeing enough of the man to suggest, or that he is, and at the same time, I'm not seeing enough to suggest maybe that he isn't. I absolutely, I don't know enough about the subject to potentially comment on it.
Yeah. Thank you, Cyril. Absolutely, he'll accept support from anyone. Which sort, in a way, sort of backs up my point, is that in a way he really doesn't care. He doesn't really care how he gets there, who he fucks over, who he pisses off, who he, it's almost like I'm going to be there and I'm going to do it irrespective. And I do wonder, as we said, and as you said a minute ago, that becomes very, very, very divisive. And and I'm not saying that it's right by any stretch of imagination. I'm certainly not saying it's right, but he's had a couple of assassination attempts made on him already, and you just wonder that the more he does, the more he says, the more people he pisses off. If he was to get him, would he last his term? And I'm not saying that's right, by the way, and I'm absolutely not saying that it's right that people feel as though they need to take it to that extremes, but in a way it's indicative of the divisive natures, that there are just so many people that are just so against him.
There are, and I guess when you provoke people and you provoke opinions out of people, you're going to provoke the people who are more extremes. You're going to provoke them more extremely. Now, I don't know enough about Harris, other than I listened to the Tilly and Shana show, and they aren't that complimentary about her. Let's just say that their opinions are somewhat they're pro-Trump. And I'll say this as well. Actually, I was in Texas in September, and while I didn't feel that there was any danger or any signs of any civil war going off while I was there, to be fair, I was there for a wedding, so I was there for unity, not for diversions or whatever the correct expression of that would be. I never saw any evidence of that. I did see a lot of support for Trump while I was there, though. I will say that. Do you want to read out the comment, Gaza?
Yeah, so Americans are asking, do they want a female or a convicted criminal in office? That is on the news over here a lot. And I think that goes back to obviously what you said just a little bit earlier. And in a way, either one of those things would make history. Yeah, for I suppose for Harris in a positive way.
I think with Trump it was overturned, though.
I don't know. I don't know.
But what a question, that the fact that the news stations are running that as a sort of and or. It's like, do we really want a female? Oh, I don't know about that. But then the alternative is a convicted criminal. It's not exactly comparing apples. It's apples with apples, is it? I mean, it's quite ridiculous, really.
It is, and it's like, oh, do we want a female? I'm not sure. Convicted criminal, he'll be close, and you're like, really, like, is that the answer? And are we and do Americans? And I'm not saying it by any stretch all Americans or even any, but do they view a female candidate for the presidency so sort of poorly that actually they're comparing her to a convicted criminal who just happens to be running on the other side? Do you know what I mean? I don't know. It's quite disparaging, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't really thought about it like that. When you think about, we had our first female prime minister here in the 1970s.
Yeah,
1979, Thatcher,
yeah,
came to power. And love her or hate her, and a lot of people have one strong emotion for her one way or another. She certainly remembered for what she achieved as prime minister, and for some of the stuff that some of the negative side to what went on
yeah,
while she was in office. But she certainly got shit done.
yeah.
I think she remembered for that.
Yeah, no, and again, I don't know enough, I suppose, about Harris, in a positive way, but also in a negative way, because again, it's the media and a lot of the propaganda and stuff from each of the sides. But you hear a lot of negative stuff about Trump and a lot of people's negative thoughts and opinions and feelings on Trump.
Mm.
I don't see the same sense of negativity in the UK around Harris, and I don't, and you watch all the news stations
No.
and you watch all the social media, and I know, again, is it that Trump brings out all the extremes in people, so the extremes in people are more likely to post on social media outlets, and whereas Harris supporters aren't? I don't know the answer, but there doesn't seem as though there's as much on Harris as there is on Trump.
Yeah, her support does appear a little quieter.
Yeah,
doesn't it?
yeah,
But I don't mean that in a negative
No,
way.
and I don't know why that would be the case, because she would have a team behind her. Go on, Dave. Sorry.
I was going to say, generally, in terms of quieter in the sense of ranting and raving and on social media, I think that it's pretty clear over there that the more educated you are, the more likely you are to vote for the Democrats or not Trump. So, I'm not suggesting that entirely it's always the case that the more educated you are, therefore the more sensible your views are, and the less likely you are to be a complete tosser. But there probably is some correlation.
Well, I'll tell you what, we do our best to alienate all the Trump supporters tonight.
Wow.
And I do know this, actually. A lot of our podcast friends in the States are all. In fact, I don't know any that do support Harris.
No, they're all.
Trump
Yeah,
supporters.
yeah, they are. Yeah.
Yeah. So Cyril chimes in and says you hear a lot of negativity about Trump because he's a bit of a shock job. I think that's pretty much it.
And I do wonder whether or not it is those, effectively that it's that clickbait, isn't it? It's that column inches. It's that, people want to read about him, whether that is in a positive or a negative way. But by creating those conversations, what he is doing is he's getting more people talking about him than potentially Harris is. So he will then spin that in a way that means that they will probably vote for him. So in his mind, that's only a good thing. The more he's in the news, the better it is for him.
No such thing as bad publicity.
No, absolutely, because he'll have a spin team money, and he'll have a team behind him that'll spin it in a certain way, and they're obviously very, very well educated and very clever people in terms of how they spin certain stories and how they respond to stories negatively about Trump. And what they'll do is they'll then start slinging mud about Harris and deflect, and it's all about that, isn't it? But I do get the sense that whereas Harris might, worry is the wrong word, I suppose, but would be concerned maybe about some of the negative press, I actually don't think Trump cares. And I think almost it's like, well, bring it on. Yeah, they've written that about me. So when I'm in office, I'll go and sue the ass off them. And I don't really care, because when I'm president, I can do what I want type thing. And it is that clickbait. It is that he doesn't really care how many people are talking about him, as long as people are talking about him.
There we go. Yeah, like Cyril certainly sides with you when he says that the guy is a marketing genius. And certainly he has his business acumen, if The Apprentice US version is to be believed.
I mean, look, he's a successful businessman.
Yeah,
and whether and look, we're not going to go into his finances and his skullduggery back in the day, and whether you feel as though it was all him or whether it was dodgy dealings or whatever. But he is a successful businessman, so he's obviously extremely savvy in how the markets work, how the economy works, how people's opinions can be swayed one way or another, how to influence people. So so you're right, he is a marketing genius.
Is that a plus? Sorry, go on.
Sorry, I was just going to say, following up from that point, he was convicted, Adam, of 34 felony offences, and his sentencing is later this month. So he is a convicted felon. So
okay.
So, yeah, but I think what I tell you, I ask you this then, what your view of this, because it baffles me to an extent, the lies that he comes out with, and just barefaced lies where there's like video evidence, photographs, witnesses, just clearly shows he's completely lying, and it just seems to pass as okay.
It wasn't.
In this country, you just couldn't do that, could you? If during our election, Keir
That's
Starmer,
all the politicians they do. Can you imagine Keir Starmer lying? Yes, I can.
No. There's a difference between lying about the policies and this, that, and the other, and things that you can't see opaquely. But if can you imagine Keir Starmer holding a press conference and then being reported that there were 6 people there, and him standing up and saying, "No, there were not. I was in the room. There was 100 people there." When there's videos and cameras, it's on the BBC News. It just wouldn't happen in this country. Yeah, in that country, it just seems absolutely you can lie. And there's absolutely zero accountability, and nobody believes anybody that says it's a lie.
Are you saying the immigrants aren't eating the cats and dogs?
You know the point I'm making. I think it's just ridiculous that he can just be barefaced lying against 100% concrete evidence, and it just passes, and it's fine.
But again, in a way that goes back. I mean, I don't know again, but I sort of feel as though that goes back to the point I made earlier, is that in a way he doesn't really care, and he'll just turn around and go, "Well, I'll sue you. If you're saying I'm lying, I'll just sue the ass off you. And I'm a very wealthy person, and I've got better lawyers than you have, and I'll find a way of suing you, and I don't care, and I'll just say it as it is. And if I want to lie, I'll lie." Yeah. And almost wrongly, by the way, in my opinion, and who you to call me out on it, because I can say what I want. Because it's freedom of speech, and I can say what I want. I can do what I want, and who gives? I'm not hurting anyone by saying there's only 100 people in the room or 6 people in the room. I can say what I want.
It's an interesting point. And just to take you back to something you said a few moments ago, Gaza, when you sort of said that, that you can't question the guy's business acumen. He is a businessman and he knows how to run a business. I think one of the things that Trump voters appreciated out of him the last time he was president is that he ran the country like a business, and like you say, he's a no-nonsense negotiator. And I think, if I'm honest, that's what a lot of people like about him. There was a lot of people who felt that when Trump was in power last time out, they had a little bit more pound in their pocket, that they felt that he had the best interests of the United States, which we say, whether that's an insular view or not, if you're living in the United States, it's a pretty good thing to have. I think sometimes when the UK, we look at how, how immigration is perceived over here, rightly or wrongly, that, we see funds going overseas where we think there's stuff that it could be better spent on here. Now, I'm not going to comment on which is right and which is wrong, but I think in terms of the way that the US operates, and the US was seen when Trump was in power last time, and as divisive as he was, unless I'm mistaken, I don't think the US was actually at war with anyone during the 4 years that he was in power, whereas in the past they've relished conflict at almost every opportunity, whereas he's sort of used his sort of bullish nature to avoid or to discourage other nations from taking action, rightly or wrongly. Do you think that perhaps is why people have a lot more time for him because of his nature of that and what he is successful at?
I think there's probably something to be said in that, and you call it is bullish nature. Other leaders may just think he's slightly unhinged, and it would be pretty dangerous to poke that bear. And it's probably somewhere in between, is the truth. And he's probably never had to reach that point of like with Russia and Ukraine. He makes it very clear that if he was in power, Russia would never have invaded Ukraine, because apparently he told Putin what would happen. Not that he's going to tell us, of course, but he will do at some point. But he told him what would happen, and therefore it wouldn't have happened. But the moment he wasn't at power, Putin thought he could do what he want, and he'd sort out all these other wars at a drop of a hat. And I think there's perhaps a small grain of strength to having a leader that is that strong and puts enough doubt in your mind as a Putin that actually, if we do this could be the consequences, because he is slightly unhinged. And there's probably some benefits then. If you're looking at him as leader of your country and you think things are going well and that is his attitude, you could see why a lot of people would like that. But again, that's not necessarily it's not that people like Trump because of who he is and how he speaks, they might like him because they think they stand up for Americans first, and it's that they like, because they'd rather just look after themselves, and they don't really care about people outside of their country.
There was when he was in last time, and there was a sort of basically footage of, and he was at a summit, and he got various sort of European leaders there, and I think French were there, and German, and he sat across from the table, and I want to say, would it have been Angela Merkel or back in was it 4 years ago, whatever it was, I can't remember, and he basically said, well, you do as I say, or you'll suffer the consequences. And it goes back to what David said a minute ago, and I can't remember what they were arguing about, but he basically went, "There's my terms. Either take it or fuck off." Effectively, there was no like wriggle room and no negotiation. It was no, that's my bottom line. If you don't like it, fuck off. But then don't expect X, Y, and Z. And ultimately, and I can't remember what the deal was, but ultimately he got the deal that he wanted, which is obviously very beneficial for America. So there's probably something in that, David, as much as. Is it the fact that other world leaders is scared the right word? And I don't mean physically scared, although obviously, America is one of the powerhouses in terms of military, but I wonder whether or not financially, globally, as a global market, they might be scared into how it would hit them in the economy if they don't do what he wants, and therefore that's why he's always able to drive the hard bargain. There was a famous story about, I don't know if I told it last time. There was a Scottish architect, and he was, and it was when Trump was buying a couple of golf courses in Scotland. I don't know whether it's Ayrshire or Trump Turnberry or Trump Aberdeen, one of them. And he got a relatively local graphic designer to design the clubhouse and all the hotel and everything. And it came to the payment, and let's say it was 100 grand for all these designs and drawings and everything else. And Trump said, "I'll give you £1,000. And the guy was like, no, we signed 100,000. He's like, "Okay, well, sue me then. But it'll take 10 years. It'll cost you more than the 100 grand. So you either take the £1,000 now that I'm offering you, or I'll see you in court."
Is that a true story?
Yeah. And effectively, this guy's like, "Hold on, what do I do?" And what happened was that, I mean, he effectively did try to sue him, but then thought, well, I'm not now going to be out of pocket because it is going to take me ages. Trump basically said, "I've got better solicitors than you. I'll drag it out. Find a loophole in the clause somewhere. Find a loophole in the contract somewhere, and you'll get fuck all."
There you go. We got a few comments then that we should read out. First one from Steve. I might be using this as a tagline for this episode. "Money talks as much as it lies." Combined, both candidates have spent over $1 billion. That's a lot of money. Cyril, "I don't know if Trump stopped war so much as benefited from his predecessor's foreign policy. His greatest achievement, though, was getting the NATO members to fork up more cash." And then finally, someone who's pro-Trump, Big Titty Tedwell of the Titty and China show, says, "Very nervous if Trump does not win." So conflicting opinions there. Yeah. Just out of interest, guys, you mentioned Trump's golf course. Have you ever played golf at any of them?
Yeah, so I've played Trump Turnberry, so which was it used to be the Ailsa course, and there's two there. So you've got the Ailsa course, then you've got Robert the Bruce course. Lovely hotel was, in fact, it was the weekend that COVID hit, and we were up in Scotland. We were playing, and they were talking about, do you have to close hotels and this, that, and the other, and then on the second day, they said, "Oh, we're closing all the restaurants, but you can still have like your food in your room, but all of the restaurants, the bar areas are going to be closed." The golf course was okay because they had social distancing, so they said as long as you're staying away from each other, sort of thing. But yeah, Trump Aberdeen is meant to be absolutely stunning. I haven't played it, but the Ailsa course is very nice, very good.
So there you go, folks. You can put it out there. You can put that on your headlines. Tallboy Radio supports racism. We don't really.
So big titty. So he said very nervous if Trump does not win. Do you think he's going to win?
That's the big question.
And that's the question. It's like, yeah, okay. It's like, yeah, we might want him to win or not want him to win, but do we think he will win? And you mentioned he is odds on.
He's the favorite. Yeah, he's the favorite of the bookies. Doesn't always mean anything. Like I say, the bookies can be quite canny though. If they know that, if they know where the money's going, they can put the odds one way and you'll vote. And
Yeah.
Look, whichever way happens, you know they'll win out. That's how the industry works. But certainly, I'm not criticizing because it pays my wages. But at the end of the day, Trump is shown as the favorite. There is a degree of belief in the polls. Certainly, recently we've seen that Harris's stock has slumped. Certainly, after following on some of her public appearances, where she hasn't come across particularly strongly. Big Titty says he thinks he has a better chance than he did a month ago.
Okay, okay.
Teddy, I'd love if you could just give us a sort of 10, 12 word reason why you're very nervous if Trump does not win. Just what's the single or biggest two things that you think are going to be a problem if Trump doesn't win? I'd love to get that perspective, because I don't know how much of this episode you've listened to, but if you've listened to all of it, don't take it personally.
Yeah, not for me. I've been pretty. I've been impartial.
Yeah, look, it's really hard. We're talking about something that is happening quite a distance away. Yes, obviously we're aware of it because of the social media and this, that, and the other. But and it goes back, I suppose, to what I'm saying. I don't know enough. I don't know enough about Harris and compared to Trump, so it's really hard to sort of say in a way one way or the other, because we've spoken for what appears to be 41 minutes and 48 seconds about Trump.
It's interesting, that, isn't it?
Isn't it?
Isn't that interesting? Actually, to be fair, we have. Harris has got to mention hither and thither. But no, Big Titty he quotes Nina and the 99 Red Balloon song, which Dave loves so much. Nina. Yeah. the War Machine.
He's very nervous if Trump doesn't. What makes Teddy nervous Trump doesn't win? The War Machine. I can't comment. I don't know what you're saying there, Teddy. Sorry, I'm being a bit dim. I don't know if Adam or Gaz can help me out.
Well, no, but I can read out Cyril's comment. My prediction is Kamala wins, but not a landslide. Trump contests everything all the way to the Supreme Court. So it's then hands in a turn like in 2000. Okay. That's you probably get a decent odds on that one as well, Cyril, I suspect. And Paul/Steve chimes in with, I think there are a lot of voters who don't want to admit that they are going to vote for Trump. I think that's why he will win. That's interesting. So, like you say, Gaz, you made a really interesting point there. I said that really facetiously, like it was a
Thanks very much. Exactly, yeah.
But I didn't mean it that way. But I highlighted the wrong words in my using my tone. But certainly, you're right. We have spoken a lot about Trump, and although isn't that interesting that we, as much as we tried to keep it on a level of impartiality and add our British tones to the concerns, we have spoken almost entirely about Trump. And is that the way the media has dictated to us, or is it the way that Trump has made the media dance?
I go back to maybe what I said 10, 15 minutes ago. I think he's clickbait. I think it goes back to what Cyril was saying in terms of being a marketing genius. I think the more he gets people talking about him, the happier he is. Not sure. No, Teddy.
Teddy, you're not helping. You're really not helping me here.
I mean, it certainly will be interesting if that's the case, Big Teddy, and in a way, maybe only for that. In a way, I hope that is the case.
Here's the thing, though, dude. On that, do you want to know the people on Epstein's client list? Do you? Do you need? Well, first of all,
I don't think we need to know. I don't know. That's a great question.
I don't know, dude.
You've literally put me in the spot, and I actually don't know the answer.
It's a difficult one.
I do and I don't.
Yeah,
I do because I want to see justice brought to them.
Yeah,
if indeed it's been proved that they actually have done things that they shouldn't have done. But I don't.
You don't want to know, do you? Let's be honest.
I certainly don't want to know the details, and I certainly don't want to know what they've done. But I would want them to have, justice and stuff if they have done things that they shouldn't have done.
Indeed. Yeah, indeed. And the same with P. Diddy. I think, I don't know if P. Diddy's used it a little bit as a distraction. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure he's done some awful things, but I think sometimes the time in the news is more relevant than the news itself, if that makes any sense.
And there's an element of that, isn't there? And again, there's an element of timing and deflection and mudslinging and stuff on either side that it's no coincidence that certain stories are leaked at certain times.
Yeah.
So.
Go on, do you want to read out some of these comments, Gaza?
Yeah, where do we get up to? So,
I'll stick them on the screen for you.
Big Titty.
No.
Oh no, there. Okay, so yeah, Paul may be right, which is Steve. So Steve may be right. Big Titty. Liberals keep us in war more than Republicans. They get richer from war. I mean, it is a known fact that war does make money. So yeah, that might be it. That might be the case. Cyril, media in all of its forms like that, which is abnormal, and unfortunately, Kamala is quite normal. Yeah, and again, that's what we sort of go back to what we said a minute ago. Is that yeah, she is quite normal, sane, well educated. I'm not saying Trumpism, by the way, but she's not sensationalist, whereas Trump is.
No. Yeah, so Steve chimes in and says, I think Teddy is saying that Biden is covering for his son, Hunter. Don't think anybody doubts that for 1 second. And Big Teddy says, Trump brokered peace in the Middle East. Look at things right now. David, I'm sure you'll have opinion on that.
Sorry, I was just muted. Not really, no.
Probably for the best.
I don't know enough. I don't know enough about that subject to know what his involvement was in brokering peace, whether it was Trump who did it and led it and achieved something, or what, or whether he threatened people. I don't know. I don't know enough about it, so it wouldn't be fair to comment and say he did or he didn't.
Well, I tell you one election we can comment on though. So we covered it quite extensively when we had the election here in the UK. Now I went on record and I told people that you know my opinion on the Conservative Party at the time and still now, and I voted Labour. Was I right to do so?
Time will tell.
No, I'm not feeling too good about my decision right now.
Look, ultimately, time will tell, and you'll only really, I suppose, know whether it was the right or wrong decision. I would say maybe after a whole term, and if then Labour were to get in for a second term, then you might start to see what Labour would do, because a lot of the first term is them, and by that I mean Labour, and if Tories got in and following Labour and so on, you spend the first couple of years just mopping up and changing what the previous regime has done. So you only really see the benefit, I suppose, when you get into maybe the third or fourth year of that term, or the subsequent term if you're successful enough to get a second one. So
absolutely.
Have you at work, Gaz, and obviously you can't go into specifics, but have you ran the numbers of how much it's going to cost you as an organisation in terms of the employer's national insurance rise?
I haven't. I know that our obviously our finance team have, and they've run it from an educational point of view and then from a care home point of view, and they have, but I haven't from a standalone school perspective. So and again, it's one of those things that goes back to what I was saying. Is that something that is going to be a legacy, or is that then something that in 3 years' time, 4 years' time, that if Tories got in, for example, well, they'll just scrap that and then they'll revert, and then things change again. So I suppose it's only something that I genuinely only really feel as though you see the benefit of something in the second term if they were to get the second term, because otherwise it's just flux and transition.
Yeah, I think you're right there. I don't know whether they'll get a second term.
I don't know.
Opinions at the moment.
Well,
I don't know who you're going to vote for. You're going to vote for the Tories? I don't know. Well, Big Titty says, thank you all for the show and all of your opinions. I respect all of you, which is good to hear, because so often the politics can be divisive.
Because he could have quite easily said he didn't for Dave after what he said about Trump.
Well, no, but it's great that you can have a different opinion and not fall out with somebody. The bottom line, you can talk about politics, you can talk about religion, you can talk about things you disagree on, you talk about how shit Everton are, you talk about why Arsenal aren't going to win the league and why Man United are about to fall apart. We can all talk about those things and we can not fall out about it, although I will get a bit upset if you say bad things about Arsenal.
I do.
But I mean, also, Tiddy may not actually like Trump. He just might like the policies.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's pretty pro-Trump.
But again, I mean, just by you saying that, Dave, there would be lots of people, almost the flip to that, the mirror to that, which would be they actually don't really know about the manifesto or the policies, and they just like him. Do you know what I mean? So it's either way, isn't it? And you can go either way. You can go, well, actually, I don't like him as a figurehead. I don't like Keir Starmer as a figurehead, but actually I agree with what Labour are doing. I don't, by the way, but I agree with what Labour are doing. But you'll get a lot of people, maybe not in the UK, saying a lot of people like Keir Starmer, but in America, you'll get a lot of people that will say, I like Trump. Not so sure about the political views, but I'm sure that if he was to get in, he would change them, if that makes sense. So they're voting for the person as opposed to the policies. So I think you can sort of flip that over almost. And for everybody, maybe, Dave, that you say, well, I don't really like him, but I like policies. I suspect in America, you might get equally as many that go, well, I don't really care about policies. I just like him.
Yeah. I think, he is, we talk about, well, we talked earlier, I think you mentioned, might have been you mentioned earlier about people voting the way that media personalities vote, or it might be Cyril, I forget. And the fact of the matter is, that Trump is a media personality and people are swayed by him. So Steve says, ask small businesses, pensioners, and farmers if you made the right decision. I'm not going to ask them, Steve. I'll go a punch in the mouth.
You can ask me on one of them.
Go on.
No.
What you didn't?
I'm nearly the middle one.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Farmer. All right. Yeah, we're not pensioners, just to be clear. Not yet, anyway. We're trying.
Nearly.
We're trying our best to keep
Tiddy's asking now, if the elected president dies, would you rather have JD Vance or Tim Walz step into those shoes? And I've got to say, Tiddy, in all honesty, I know nothing about either of them.
Know a little bit about Vance.
Yeah, but again, you see, yeah.
I've heard Tim Walz has the executive though.
Where have you heard that?
Well, Cyril's just educated me on that.
Right here on Tall Boy Radio.
Look, and it's a real damning sort of slight on us as Tall Boy Radio and B the UK anyway. That actually I don't know enough, and that's the really bad thing, isn't it? I just don't know it. I just don't know. And if he was to die, I couldn't even form an answer for that because I don't know enough about any of them.
I don't think it's bad that we three don't know a great deal about the potential vice presidents or necessarily the details and depth of knowledge that Americans may have about the policies of their Republican and Democratic parties. So, I don't think we necessarily need to know, because there's a lot of other countries in the world where we probably know even less. The fact we're having a podcast talking about it, though, is a little bit different. But hey, we're giving a viewpoint from in the UK of how we see it and what we understand of it. And for any Americans listening, you can be pretty confident that our views are being led almost entirely by the media. Adam's a bit different because he's been over to Texas recently, so he's spoken to real people. But for me and Gaz, it's probably almost entirely, apart from what Steve says, it's almost entirely based on media. And for me personally, that is almost entirely what I hear on the BBC, because that's pretty much where I consume my left-wing news from.
Yeah, and look, there'll be certain media outlets that are slightly more trusted than others, and some are slightly more flagrant with some of the things that they say. So you probably can find a more educated view, but a lot of what we base it on is, you might get your broadsheets, your tabloids, and this, that, and the other, and so Dave's right. We get a very limited view over here of what's going on.
Yeah. Interesting point as well from Steve. Make up an answer. It's on YouTube or the internet. People will believe you. So, it's true, though. Literally, there is a degree now. Don't get me wrong, it's monitored, and it's monitored by the fact checkers. And how accurate the fact checkers are, let's not get started on that one, because they're more opinion checkers than fact checkers, in my humble opinion. But certainly, is it monitored? And if people buy into your stock, then you can pretty much say what you want and people will believe it. And if you dispute it, then maybe people will think that, well, you're disputing it because you disagree. Opinion has more sway, I think, now than facts ever have done, and that's always a concern. If you remember, I was a Ron DeSantis fan for president. Yeah, he was. To be fair, I can remember that. Yeah, he was a big fan of the guy. Not the Buttigieg guy. I forget the other one. And Cyril says, "Yikes! I've lost.
Don't know which bit that was about.
I've lost track. I've lost track of where we're up to with this. To be honest, guys, there's a lot of comments. We're not used to this, but Big Titty says, I dislike Harris more than I dislike Trump. Goods are up 20% while my income is down 30% because of sales and high interest rates. Yeah.
And I think, go on, Dave.
Sorry, guys. I was just going to say, following up from Tiddy, that that comment, because we hear that a lot in this country, that the state of the economy and people have less money in their pocket and everything's more expensive. But over here, everyone conveniently, in my mind, just kind of dismisses the whole COVID and the furlough payments, the billions and billions and billions of pounds we spent on paying people to stay at home and not do anything, essentially. Plus, then you had the war from Putin, which then just drove up the energy costs and which drove up the cost of goods because the cost of fuel and getting things around. So it was a massive, massive impact. And people just kind of gloss over that and go, well, that was 14 years of Conservatives. And how you put that comment there, I don't know if you think that was nothing to do with the Democrats and Biden and it was COVID. Sorry, the other way around. If it's nothing to do with COVID or the war in Russia and you think it was all just down to the Democrats or Biden, it'd be interesting to know which way you do fall on that.
Indeed, yeah. And this is it. Like you say, there's been a number of global factors. Agree with them or not agree with them. The bottom line is they've generated a cost, and where there is a cost, it needs to be paid for. And when it's paid for by us, because that's where they get their money from, our taxes. And everybody is suffering. And don't get me wrong. I think there was people saying at the times of COVID that and everybody who was sat at home on their furlough payments, thinking this is wonderful. We knew, looking at it, there was going to be a cost involved, and there was going to be a price to be paid.
But I do wonder whether or not, and again, I said it a while ago, and some people may beg to differ, but we're three relatively well-educated people, and I think
2 and me
2.5, yeah, but I do think that whilst we were able to see that at some point there probably would be a trade-off and a payoff of the furlough payments, and it was going to hit us at some point in some capacity, there would have been lots of people that just wouldn't have realized that or had the insight to know that, and they'd just been, wow, this is great, I'm sitting at home, I'm getting paid for doing nothing, and hey, bring it on. I think, well, actually down the line that is going to hit us because they are going to have to recoup it. If people are just print more money, it's easy, you know what I mean? And it's that type of thing.
Yeah, well, I do need to bring in Cyril's point as well, because it is a really good one. In the US, I described the economic situation to corporate greed. Even as cost of living has gone up, corporate profits are higher than ever. And I think, we can, and we all agree, we understand why there was a need maybe to put energy prices up and what have you. However, they're still making some pretty tidy profits. They don't seem to be suffering, and they're making more money than they've ever made. So are these factors to blame, or is there a degree of corporate greed in there, Dave, from a man who's a corporate background?
Well, I just see that Tiddy is agreeing with Cyril on that, but yes, organisations made a lot of money for various factors throughout both the COVID and Putin's war. But I don't have the answer to this, and I'm sure somebody's done the numbers, but I would ask the question of those companies, those corporations and the corporate greed, the profits they've had since the start of COVID in excess of what they've had before. If you took all of that, how would that stack up against the additional spending that the government of any given country has had to spend to support their economy and those people through those times? And are we talking like, they're 2%? Or is the corporate greed, all that excess money, is that far outweighing what the government's had to spend? I suspect it's nearer the former than the latter. So whilst it's perhaps a soundbite, and it sounds like you could explain away trillions of pounds of overspend with billions of pounds of excess profit, I don't think the two are going to add up.
I know something, Dave. Next week, whatever we're doing the episode about, I'm going to put out that we're going to do an episode about ADHD, because it seems to bring people in.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the number of sort of viewers and stuff. I think we just keep saying it's adult ADHD, and we just keep doing it.
Indeed.
I don't know, Tiddy. Are you? I'm guessing by your sort of question. Oh well, there you go. Then There's your answer. As if by magic.
Yeah. Just remember as well, this is also an audio podcast. We do need to read the question.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Oh, so we did say, "Oh, we're better off now than we were 4 years ago," and then literally replied, "I think not." So, but if that's the case, then do you think that then if Trump was in 4 years' time, you would be in a better place then? And I suppose, is that short termism, and do you feel as though if he is to get in and he was to get in, he would have the capacity to turn the economy around in such short space of time? Because remember, when you talk about economic cycles, you're talking about almost like tens of years as opposed to years. So if he was to get in 4 years' time, would you be in a better place? And obviously, genuinely, I don't know the answer. I don't know the ins and outs of the US economic cycle per se, but I don't know. It'd be interesting to know.
Indeed. I think the nature of the beast is there's probably enough people out there that believe that he will make a significant difference, just because of the way he negotiates. Cyril says, depends on where your income is generated. Investors have done very well. Big Titty says, I certainly do, but it will take Congress and the Senate to make that happen. So we're at the hour mark.
Keep going, carry on. I'm enjoying it.
No, we can keep going. I've still got beer left in my can, so I'm happy enough to keep cracking on if you guys are.
Hey, look, it's weird, isn't it? Because we said we didn't have a guest on. We said we'd sort of we'll talk about the electoral the vote coming up, and if we can't talk about that, we'll talk about something else. We've literally not stopped talking about it for an hour and 1 minute, and it's and we probably could go on and without rehashing everything that we've gone over. I think because Trump, in a way, is so visible and so divisive and is so Marmite in terms of, he's so polar in people's thoughts and opinions. You probably could go on for another hour talking about him. Go on, Dave.
Yeah, when you say Marmite there, I think that's probably the most striking thing, is it? Because I again, only absorb the news from what primarily the BBC radio and website, but you don't tend to hear people saying, wow, Trump, I don't really like him as a person, but his policies are great, or his policies aren't great, but I like him. It is really, I can't stand the man, he's a dangerous lunatic, or I love him and he's going to save this country.
Yeah.
That is the very definition of polar, isn't it? The two separate poles. Big Titty says, thank you, fellas, for the show. Very entertaining and a subject we discuss on our podcast nearly every week. Let's give that a shout out now. If you're not familiar with Big Titty Tidwell, go check out the Tiddy and Shana show. They do talk about American politics nearly every week, as well as Shana's visits to Walmart and other such things. A little bit of barbecue. And for the love of God, please bring back 420 East, dude, because I absolutely love that show. I think that's it for us.
Yeah,
guys.
I think that's it. Yeah.
So yeah, I listen. Bearing in mind this is something that we hadn't planned. We had expected to be talking about ADHD with our guest tonight. I do, and we will do that because it's a really important episode. And I said to her, when I spoke to her earlier about when we were going to replan it for, I said, let's see, the only thing I've got now for the rest of the year is a half-hour slot, and I think this warrants an hour slot. So we're going to be bringing you that episode in mid to late January. And I think that will be a very important episode. And the one thing that that I need to, me and Dave operating the same controls here. The one thing that I have to say is, for me, it's been a very interesting episode because I thought we'd probably talk about American politics for 10 minutes, then move on to talking about like the weekend's football, or Saquon Barkley or something like that. I don't know. I thought that might just come.
As long as we're not talking about the Washington Commanders Hail Mary with 2 seconds left, I'm really not that bothered. But
no, I didn't think you'd want that mentioned.
No.
For some reason, I don't think Big Teddy would want that mentioned either as a Bears fan.
I'd in fact scrub that. I don't know why I mentioned it. But no, like I say, we're an hour and 4 minutes in, and I've really enjoyed it. And Cyril, again, thanks guys, it's been fun. Appreciate it. Tiddy, no problem for the shout out, dude. Keep doing what you're doing. And Cyril, help keep the election anxiety down. Appreciate you tuning in, guys. And look, as and when either he does or he doesn't win, no doubt we'll cover American politics again at some point in the near future. So check us out again.
Almost certainly. Dave, who's going to win?
Kamala Harris. And then Trump will cry like a baby, throw his toys out the pram, kick up a fuss, say it was all rigged, probably start another riot, and more people will die unnecessarily, and eventually he'll get sent to prison.
Yes.
I think Trump will win. Whether or not I that's what I want to happen, I say I'm not invested enough to really know the ins and outs. Again, I can only go on the media portrayal of him and then Harris, but I do think Trump will win.
Yeah, I've got a funny feeling it's going to go Harris's way, same as Dave. To be honest with you, I don't know what happens from that, how well it's taken, or whether the legitimacy of that will be questioned. I'm sure it will, whichever way, whoever wins. I'm sure the legitimacy will be questioned. But I've just got a funny feeling that Harris is going to win it. Whether that's good for America or bad for America, Lord knows. We'll do another episode in 4 years' time, and we will give you an answer for that. But for now, I will wish you all a fond farewell. We are back next week talking about something entirely different again.